Welcome back to another edition of Power Tips. Today, Kylie is going to walk us through some of the really cool, exciting features coming in the wonderful world of AI Builder.
Excellent. So you guys know that I love AI Builder, and it's so exciting and so many great ways to bring AI into our Power Apps or Power Automate with very low code, all point and click setting up those models. And I realized we hadn't talked about the AI Builder announcements that were in the last release wave, but a lot of those are coming GA soon. So let's talk about them. This first one is you're able to monitor your AI Builder activity. This is in preview now and going GA in September. You find it in your Power Automate portal. There's this hidden area to find your monitoring your AI Builder activity, and it actually shows you which models ran, what happened, and what I thought was interesting is how many AI credits it takes. So I think we know you get so many AI credits with some of your Dynamics licenses, I believe, or you can buy your capacity add-on. But this is a great way to see, how many credits is this form actually taking. And you see I have one there that's taking 10 credits, right? That could quickly add up over time, right? If you were running that at scale. So it's something good to be checking out.
And that's per, do you know if the credits are, because that was the part that caught my eye too, that I think that's super handy, and I know you're going to talk about credits in a minute, but do you know if that's per object, that it's taking 10 credits per object it's assessing, or is it 10 credits for that instance of the run, or I assume it's the latter.
For looking at the examples that's coming up here, that was like one run of, in that case, it was a prompt, whatever they're called, an AI Builder prompt, which we're also going to talk about in a second. And so that was one run of the prompt, cost 10 credits. So most of these showing up here are from prompts as well. Yeah. And so I think what would be interesting is to look at some of these with the form document processing and see how many credits those are taking. Yeah.
Yeah,
This
I
seems
agree.
like a rather important thing to keep an eye on. You mentioned that this is in a hidden area in Power Automate.
Yeah.
Not where I would expect to find this.
Oh.
Yeah, I was surprised by that as well, because usually I access AI Builder from the Power Apps, but the documentation has it when you go to, you have your pinned list in your on the side of the Maker portal or the Power Automate portal, and you can add more, and then you can click Discover All, and then you say AI Builder activity, and then you can pin it from there. So interesting to look at, and interesting to see if AI Builder is going to fall under the Power Automate team more, or how that kind of shakes out. I don't really know where they fall now.
Cool.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I mentioned Prompt Builder, so if you guys haven't tried this out, this is really cool. So probably a year ago, they released the GPT for AI Builder, and it was basically you had a prompt, and you could fill in whatever you wanted, and you could get a response, and that was it. But now you can build your own prompts with specific data points. So what I have on the screen is a prompt that I built with 3 data points being, we're trying to build an out of office message, and we're building the name and where they're going, what's happening, and if they'll be available, something like that, right? And then we're using GPT to build an out of office message. So those little purple guys are basically our parameters. So we can keep using this prompt and passing different parameters to it. And you can pass that through Power Automate or through Power Apps, right? So it allows our makers to define the structure of that prompt, and then you could have your users just putting in the data instead of kind of having the user build the whole prompt or building the prompt via something in Power Apps. Instead of building it with PowerFX or an expression, we're just passing parameters into a structured prompt. Have you guys seen this at all?
Haven't played around with it now.
Lightly haven't played. Same. I haven't played with it. But so in terms of, I'm going to say semi-real world example, those data prompts, those purple, what did you call them? Purple thingies. So
yeah,
those
thingies.
could, yeah. So those could be source from a SharePoint list or Dataverse
Yep.
table as a field. And so I think when you start to think about it like that, and I on the fly, I don't have a great example, but in the back of my mind, it's
Yeah.
screaming like there's a ton of potential here when
Right.
you're like thinking about responding to people or auto generation of content
Right.
and all that kind of stuff. So that's
Mhm.
pretty fascinating. I've only read about this lately, so this is a cool
Yeah.
way to see it.
Yeah, for sure. Like for this little example, I had a Power App where people could enter in the data points and then it passes them to the prompt and returns a response, right? And you can do that all within Power FX using being connected to the prompt. But like you said, if we did this in Power Automate and we connected to a SharePoint list, you could automatically generate, content there, or even use it to be like, hey, let's look at this opportunity and pass opportunity points. Like, what do you recommend someone does next, or what should the email message to this client be? Things like that we could do. So,
Cool. So
yeah,
then you could use that output from the prompt output, the prompt response on
yep,
the bottom of that screenshot, and use that in your flow as well, which would be
right,
great. But then I've got red flags and bells going off in my head about, holy moly, you don't want to just send stuff out. We talk all the time about this Copilot, not autopilot. You don't want to just send it. You probably want to tee that up so that
yeah,
somebody can review the thing before you action it, because I think you're going to talk about, I think I saw on one of the slides that I snuck a peek earlier, that you've got some temperature control, and the temperature control is important because that's how creative is this going to be and how
right,
or how not creative. So
Mm.
if your temperature is too high, I think means it's super creative, which means it's going to start to pull in like all kinds of potentially random stuff,
hmm
because you're basically giving it full control, saying be as creative as you want, and that generates things that often don't make sense. So interesting.
right. Yeah, we still have to keep in mind all of our responsible AI practices when we're doing these things.
Yeah, definitely.
Good call out.
But yeah, and great tee up to our next thing. So there are some prompt builder enhancements that are coming in September as well. So better GPT-4 reasoning, knowledge updates. We'll also be able to connect directly with Dataverse, right? So kind of what we were talking about on the last slide is we could get Dataverse and then we could submit pieces from that Dataverse to our prompt as part of those parameters. But now I'll also be able to directly connect that prompt with Dataverse and say, this is one of your knowledge sources that you're using to answer this prompt. And then also controlling the model temperature, as Malcolm brought up. So just kind of continuing to increase the power of those prompts and adding in, I think this functionality sounds kind of similar to what we see in Copilot Studio, right? We're not going to have the
Mhm.
chat like you have in Copilot Studio, but similar building the knowledge in the same way.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering how they would work together with Copilot when you were kind of describing how this works. Like, will they work together or do you kind of use one or the other? And then
Good
how does it work
question.
with traditional Power Automate flows that might be running on similar things and classic workflows? And yeah, this is interesting how this will all
all of
come
those are,
together.
yeah, all of those are great questions.
Time to play, right? Speaking of
And
playing.
yeah, and so the really exciting thing is we're trying to figure out how this all works together is they announced that the developer plan is going to come with some of those AI builder credits, those AI credits that we saw in our first slide. So really exciting for us to be able to play with that instead of using, previously there was just a 30-day trial, but now you'll be able to have those credits in your developer environment, try this out. And I think that'll be really good combined with the new monitoring we'll have. So
Mhm.
try out your new form, find out how many credits it is, and then look at how often would I use this and figure out what capacity you need.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
That's
super
helpful
handy.
because that's like one of the big questions people have. How much will this cost me? Well, I
Yeah.
don't know.
I don't know. We'll see.
Well, and there were limits before. I'm wondering if they're still in place. I haven't done enough reading on it, but there used to be like you could run this many documents through. And so I assume that the credit approach is going to replace that. So you now get this bucket of credits and you can use it. Maybe that was kind of the same. So Probably just rambling. Disregard
Yeah,
those statements. But
it's very confusing. That's the short
yeah,
answer. The credits are confusing because you have this whole giant bucket, but you don't really know what it means. And every operation you run costs a different number of credits, and it's very hard to kind of understand how much you're really using. So I
right.
think this will be helpful for you to be able to actually try it out and see. And it relates to what I have on the last slide as well, that there's going to be better admin visibility into capacity, so they can monitor what's happening in AI Builder. They can request those extensions, all of that from the admin center. And there's also a note in one of those releases about using this to kind of set up the AI Center of Excellence. So basically from the admin center, you can see AI models and where they're being used all over your tenant and all over in which different environments, and kind of allocate credits and see what's happening, and just manage kind of what your users are doing with AI, which I think will be really good and goes well with our responsible AI practices as well. Gives us that visibility so we can be holding people accountable and making sure we're not doing anything crazy.
Hmm.
So this must mean that first slide we were looking at, that will also be available in the Power Platform Admin Center, right? Because wouldn't that fall
think
under
so.
Yeah, you'd
managed
think.
capacity?
I would think so, but we'll see.
The word request jumps out at me, right? Admins can request credit extensions. That's an interesting choice of language, because I wonder if, to me, that would you would buy. You wouldn't request them. You would just buy them. You need more? Go ahead and buy another bucket of 20,000 and it's X. So the language of request credit extensions is interesting to me. I want to understand what that means.
Yes, I have similar questions, but is there other stuff that we can buy right now from the admin center, or is it all pushing us back out to like the Microsoft admin center to purchase? So I'm not sure. I guess
us. Yeah.
it might also be a question, is it Power Platform admin versus like billing admin and some of those different roles and things like that? I'm not sure.
Wow. It's things that make you go, So all good questions, much like Heidi's earlier questions. So, I mean, that's part of why we love doing these. It just help us uncover some of these things and think about what do we need to read up on even further. So hopefully this has done that for you, and you've got some, as a viewer, you've got some new information that you didn't know about if you haven't read up on any of this stuff. Hopefully this is a good prompt, pun intended, for you to go and give it a shot and read about it and learn it, and best of all, start to play around with it with one of the developer pieces and get your 20,000 credits and see what you can do with it. So hope you enjoyed this episode, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.